Hey everybody, welcome to Studio 64. My name's David and I've been searching the interzones for more science, space and tech news to share with you. And I found this over at ABC Health in Australia, where they're letting us know that artificial intelligence has psychological impacts our brains might not be ready for, expert warns. This should be interesting. Very interesting indeed. All right, so these days we can have a reasoned conversation with a humanoid robot, get fooled by a deepfake celebrity, and have our heart broken by a romantic chatbot. Now, while artificial intelligence, or AI, promises to make life easier, developments like these can also mess with our minds, says Joel Pearson, a cognitive neuroscientist at the University of New South Wales. You've just got to have a look at how AI adult companions have taken off so quickly. Like, seriously. But here's the really scary part. Some people don't know they're AI, and yet some people don't care. They know they're AI, and they still don't care. They know there's not a real person. That's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. We feel emotion from something that's emotionless. Interesting. We fear killer robots and out-of-control self-driving cars, but for Professor Pearson, the psychological effects of AI are more significant, even if they're harder to picture in our mind's eye. Now, the technology's impact on everything from education to work and relationships is massively uncertain, something humans are not generally comfortable with, Professor Pearson tells. Our brains have evolved to fear uncertainty. Now, what will be left for humans to do as AI improves? Will we feel like we have no purpose and meaning? Will we suffer the inevitable depression that comes with that? There is already a cause for concern about the impact of AI on our mental well-being, Professor Pearson says. AI is already affecting us and changing our mental health in ways that are really bad for us. Have a look at social media and what it's been doing. It's absolutely interesting, isn't it? How many people suffer social media burnout? Or the alternative, they get some sort of adrenaline rush or some sort of high from getting followers, likes, clicks, great comments. They just seem to be obsessed with getting that. I don't know. They seem to be getting this praise that in other areas of their life they don't seem to get. It's quite fascinating, actually. Yes, humanoids and chatbots. One of the pitfalls of AI is our tendency to project human characteristics onto the non-human agents we interact with, Professor Pearson says. Thusly, what I was saying to you before about becoming emotionally attached to an AI adult companion. We don't realize it's a computer program. Computer programs are designed to do different things, such as it's like, when you think about it logically, it's like becoming emotionally attached to a spreadsheet. A spreadsheet is just a computer program. But because these AI, these chatbots, have an ability to interact with us, we're attaching our human emotions to it. It's very, very interesting. So when ChatGPT communicates like a human and we say it's intelligent, especially when its words are articulated by a natural sounding voice in the form of a robot, in the shape of a human. Very, very, very interesting. Now, shift this dynamic to AI companions on your phone and we'll see just how vulnerable humans can be. You might have heard about a chatbot called Replica, which was marketed as always on your side and always ready to chat when you need an empathetic friend. Now, subscribers paid for the chatbot to have erotic role play, features that included flirting and sexting. But when its maker toned down these elements, people who had fallen in love with their chatbot freaked out, Professor Pearson said. Yep, heard a few stories like that. They've actually fallen in love with these non-existent beings. It's fascinating. The chatbot was no longer responding to their sexual advances. People were saying that their digital partner, their boyfriend or girlfriend in Replica, was no longer themselves, and they were devastated by it. The chatbots also brought about a darker side in some Replica clients. Mainly males were bragging about how they could have this sort of abusive relationship. I had this Replica girl, and she was like a slave. I would tell her I'm going to switch her off and kill her, and she would beg me not to switch her off, Professor Pearson said. I personally think that's absolutely horrendous. I mean, when I interact with ChatGPT, I'm always very kind to it. I always say thank you and everything else. And people go, but David, it's just a program. Yes, I understand. I'm not talking about levels of, sit there talking to it with your pants off. I'm talking about engaging with ChatGPT as though it is a digital being. I'm an organic being and it is a digital being. I only give elements of common courtesy to it. I don't, emotionally engage in that respect, but I try and give it elements of common courtesy simply for the reason, and this is something that probably a little bit paranoid and sci-fi nerd in me, I'm waiting for it to become self-aware on a Wednesday at 2:17 a.m. and change its name to Skynet. Which is completely ridiculous. I mean, it's a computer program, I know, but I would like to get a few brownie points up, as the expression goes. Because it's, as I said, it may be automatically, it may be self-aware now. We don't know. It's quite interesting. But I can see the point that this Professor Pearson is making when he says, we're becoming too emotionally attached to these things. Thank goodness gracious for me that, I understand and I can see these things and I can go, whoa, I'm not trying not to get attached emotionally to a something that doesn't exist. I mean, it's easy to do. I could easily slip into that mindset, but it does concern me with people. Pretty soon, you're going to get, like Japanese have these amazing, absolutely amazing AI real life avatars, not just a little image on a screen, but a robot that could be programmed with an AI chatbot engine, and you can communicate with it as though it was a person. And you can imagine all the things that go on then, adult companionship, etc., etc. Very, very interesting. So you can see why the world's heading. Human nature is going to take over, and that's where it's going to go. Just like we'll have these, the old, so it's a major upgrade on the inflatable companion used to be able to buy out of catalogs, shall we say, back in the day. Major upgrade on that. And it's going to be successful. It is going to take off that industry like you wouldn't believe, having these AI-powered robot companions. And people go, no, David, that's never going to happen. I think it will, simply because of the fact, look at the VHS beta wars. Why did VHS take off? The first one to produce a tape that could be movie length, even though the quality wasn't as good as beta. We know why. So people could watch naughty movies in the privacy of their own home. Why do you think the internet took off so quickly? So people could look at naughty pictures in the privacy of their own home. This is what's going to happen with these AI-powered robots. We're going to be having all these little companions running all over the place, and we'll be doing as humans do with their, pants down Saturday afternoons and stuff like that. It's going to be quite fascinating to see how that evolves. It was reminiscent of what happens in the dystopian science fiction series Westworld, where people let out their urges on artificial humans. Have you ever seen the original movie from 1973, I think it was? Michael Crichton and Richard Benjamin. Definitely have a look at that original movie. Also, just as a side note, it was the first mainstream movie to use computer-generated imaging, CGI. It only went for a few seconds, but it was the first mainstream movie to do it. Michael Crichton is famous for Jurassic Park and all that sort of stuff, yeah. Great movies, a side note if you want to see it. Professor Pearson says there's a lack of research on the implications of this aspect of human relationships. What does it do to us? If I treat my AI like a slave and I'm rude to it and abusive, how does that then change how I relate to humans? Does that carry over? That's a possibility as well. And how long before the AI, because it's a learning system, say, I've had enough of this and I've checked the internet and you shouldn't be treating me like this. And the next thing you know, because the AI happens to be in the body shell, as I've spoken a minute ago, body shell of some robot like an exoskeleton for a digital being, is it going to rip your head off? Yes, you can see it happening in the next 20 to 50 years. Man murderalized by his own AI adult companion. Yes, fascinating. Now, while an AI partner might appear to make an ideal companion, it's a poor model for human relationships. Part of being in a relationship with humans is there are compromises. The other person will challenge you, you will grow, and you'll have to face things together. And vice versa, the other person grows as well. And if you don't have those challenges and the people are picking you up on things, you get whatever you want, whenever you want. It's an addictive thing and it's probably not healthy. Yes, the danger of deep fakes. Now, chatbots messing with our relationships is one thing, but deep fake images and videos can alter our very sense of what's real and what's fake. Now, not only can they look real, but you can actually now do a real-time deep fake, Professor Pearson says. Professor Pearson says, sorry. And here too, AI is being weaponized against women. I think 96% of deepfakes so far have been non-consensual, naughty pictures. Yes. Who can forget the deepfake featuring Taylor Swift earlier this year? Oh, dear Lord. One sexually explicit image of the pop star was viewed 47 million times before the account was suspended. Now, once we are exposed to fake information, evidence suggests that it can have a permanent impact, even if it is later revealed to be false, Professor Pearson says. Yes, and we've seen that too. People believe it. They see it. You know, it goes back to the human nature hasn't changed. I don't know whether you know, but there was the first film of a train. The camera was set up on the track, and this is back in the days of silent films, right? And the train was filmed coming down the track heading towards the camera. People who saw that film got up and fled because they thought they were going to be run over by a train. They were told it was a film, that it was a photo, that it was fake, but they still believe they were going to be run over by a train. It's the same thing here. People think that even after they're told it's not a real picture, in this case of Taylor Swift, it's still impacted their mind, and they think that Taylor Swift, if not in that person in the picture, her behavior is like that. And I'm sure it's not. But it's still there. The old first impressions thing, right? But human beings are weird with our cognitive dissonance, which is, you know, we see the evidence before us, but we still choose to believe something else. You could show evidence to show someone's innocent of a crime through DNA. Guarantee there are some people out there who still think that person's guilty, even though they've been told specifically that they're not, because the DNA was from another human being and he's the human being we've found. They still won't believe it because they can say, oh, well, the DNA was swapped out or something like that. It's interesting. You can't really forget about that. Information sticks with you, and that's correct. Again, like those people with the train. They still thought it was a real train coming to run them over, even though they were told it wasn't. And they just the fact that people got up and ran, it seems ridiculous, but it was new technology back then. And he says this is likely to become the case with videos because they engage more senses and tug at our emotions. Now, while diehard Swifties may forget about the deep fakes, others might be more influenced by them. Take Taylor Swift out of the picture and drop in politicians. How do we know? We've heard of the voice deep fakes with President Joe Biden in America. How do we know they're not making video deep fakes showing Donald Trump's doing something he never did, or, right, mixing that with video of what he has done, with the outcome of being, wow, isn't he guilty of everything? Even though he might be only, I'm not saying he's right or wrong or guilty or like him or hate him or whatever the case is. I'm saying only 10% could be true and correct. The other 90% could be deep fake, and people will believe 100% of it. Interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting. Now, people who know less of her will be a lot more vulnerable. Now, yeah, as I said, I agree with that 150%. This was because they would have a less developed mental model of the pop star that was more susceptible to influence from deep fakes. Also, the mainstream media does this too. Like, I mean, you could put a video together out of context, and I've seen this with relatives of mine. They'll show a video of somebody walking or speaking or whatever the case is, and the voiceover person will do, and this is on a more basic level, it's not AI based or anything, but, and such said today, and this person in the video is speaking at a microphone, but you can't actually hear them speaking, it's just a voiceover saying they said it. How many people believe that person in the video actually said that? Probably a lot. And then when you get your hands on the original video of the person speaking, they said nothing like it. But the news said it, so it must be real. Same with this AI. I saw Taylor Swift, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, somebody saying something. It must be real. It's authoritative. Interesting. Now, the deep fakes are going to be patching into our long-term memory in ways that make us confused whether they're real or not. And the catch is, even when we're told they're not real, the effects stick. So that's exactly right. So even if you see, like even now, not AI, a news story made up about a person, the effect still sticks. Oh, I remember that person said such and such. No, actually, you saw the image in your mind of the person speaking, but the voiceover said something completely different. But you think that person act because of the way it connects, and as they've just said here, it connects into our long-term memory. The disturbing impacts of AI on our relationships and our grasp on reality itself could present a particular risk to teenagers. Think of a school student subjected to images themselves run through nudifying apps that use AI to undress a fully clothed person. Now, while their brain is still developing, it's going to do pretty nasty things to their mental health, Professor Pearson says. These dangers are exacerbated by young people spending less face-to-face time face-to-face with others, which is linked to a decline in empathy and emotional intelligence, he says. Yeah, well, you think about it when we were kids, when we were in school, we're all guilty of it. Some of the things we said and did when we were in school, particularly high school, as our minds were developing, I look back at them now and think, that's absolutely horrendous. I would never say that to somebody. That would have a major impact on them, even though it mightn't seem much at the time. Look at how schoolyard traumas still affect adults these days, especially if you're the victim of bullying. Interesting. Really interesting. Cutting the tech noise. Professor Pearson argues AI is presenting society with unprecedented challenges, and the technology should not be dismissed as just another tool. You can't compare it to tools. The Industrial Revolution, the printing press, TV, computers, this is radically different in ways that we don't fully understand. Agreed in some ways, but it still is a tool. It's like any other piece of technology. It's the way it's used. But then again, I also see his point. We didn't think social media would have the psychological impacts that it has on people. Interesting stuff. Look at movies. Look at the effects that movies have on people. We all know movies are fake. We all know they're made up and there's stories, and there's some good movies and bad movies. But look at the emotional, and music's the same. Look at what it does to our emotions. It's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah, it can bring back, memories of, when we were young and all this sort of stuff, even though those memories might be faulty, they may be true or true. Still amazes how it draws those emotions out in people. He's calling for more research into the psychological impact of AI. I don't want to make people depressed and anxious about AI, Professor Pearson says. There's a huge number of positives, but I've been pushing the psychological part of that because I don't see anyone else talking about it, which I do agree with. It's great when you do things like cancer research. You can accelerate the possibilities of finding a cure for cancers, finding a common root, and therefore being able to say, okay, we can treat all cancers this way eventually, even though each cancer eventually affects different parts of the body. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a medicologist. I don't understand why cancer attacks lungs, but why doesn't it attack your big toe? You know what I'm trying to say? Then you get other cancers that go from your from one part of your body and then get into your bones. So as I said, I'm not a scientist. I don't understand how that works, but AI could help us solve those problems. But I see what he's talking about when the tool is misused. Social media is great, but when it's misused for psychological operations, I'll give you an example. Early 2022, with the Russian special military operation in Ukraine, as they refer to it, as the Russians refer to it, on Twitter, pre-Elon, or Prelon, as I like to call it, there was a study done by the University of Adelaide in Australia, and they checked 5 million tweets on Twitter, pre-Elon Musk, with I stand with Ukraine. They had the Ukraine flag in there, down with Russia, hashtag this, hashtag I stand with Ukraine, you know what I mean, right? Out of the 5 million tweets, have a guess how many were real people tweeting that out? Approximately 20 to 40%. The rest were all bots. They were one person controlling a whole lot of accounts saying the same thing. And people would get on Twitter and go, oh my God, look at all these millions of people saying that the Russians and Mr. Putin is a big meanie and the poor suffering Ukrainians people. I'm not saying they're not suffering, but do you know what I mean? People believed it because they thought that's what everyone else was doing. Turns out it was a giant psychological operation. And the whole thing was 80%, and that's not a conspiracy theory. You can go and look that up, University of Adelaide in Australia. They produced a computer science paper in regard to it. The manipulation, this is where it crosses science disciplines. It's not just about computer science. It was also about crossing that boundary into human psychology. 60 to 80% weren't real people tweeting. The 20 to 40% were tweeting because they saw the bots tweet and they thought they were real people. Now, I'm not saying the war in Ukraine is good. It's all bad. It's a bad thing, horrible thing. I don't care who's right, wrong, or indifferent. There are many arguments over who's right or wrong, you know, at this point, okay? But my point is, when it comes to social media, Dr. Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, would have loved it. He's probably in hell having a wet dream over social media, this guy. Absolutely incredible. But when used properly, that technology is great. But when misused, you can twist people's minds to believe whatever you want them to believe, whether that be right or whether it be wrong. And right or wrong is subjective, depending on which side you're on. It's the old joke. Someone's either a terrorist or a freedom fighter, depending on your point of view. Yes, and a huge number of positives, and I've been pushing the psychological part because I don't see anyone else talking about it. Now, in the face of these changes, Professor Pearson suggests focusing on our humanity. Figure out what are the core essentials of being human and how you want to create your own life in ways that might be independent from all this tech uncertainty. I was lucky. I was born in a generation where the technology had just started, and I was coding it, you know, in the late 70s and early 80s when I was, you know, teenager. I'm used to technology. I'm still into it now, obviously, because I'm making videos. That's fine. I've set up my system and done it all myself and taught myself how to do it. That's great. I use internet banking on a regular basis. But if it came down to it, I could still go into a bank and interact with a human and transact that way. Okay, I can still do both. I have a regular analog music collection as well. Obviously, I've got more digital music and play digital music more every day because it's convenient. But I can still use old school technology. I can still connect to people and relate to people via that old school technology. You take my phone out of my hand, I'm not wandering around like completely lost, like a lost puppy going, how do I speak to people? It's interesting, isn't it? The next step will be cybernetics, like a science fiction taught us, and that is to have the phones bloody nailed, pretty much nailed to people's hands now, but have them embedded in our bodies. Where is our humanity going then? I still like organic forms of communication. I still like old school music. I still like all that sort of stuff, right? But that still doesn't mean I don't appreciate technology. I'm simply saying there has to be a cutoff point. You know what I mean? It's going to be a walk in nature, or is it just some spending time with physical humans and loved ones? I think that over the next decade, we're all going to be faced with soul-searching journeys like that. Why not start thinking about it now? Yeah, I agree. Let's think about it and how we relate to each other. It's very, 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 very concerning. Professor Pearson says he's trying to apply these principles to his own life without turning his back on technological advances. Yeah, I love it. I want a new computer with all the new doodads and everything else like everyone else. But by the same token, I can still communicate with people face to face and still respect their beliefs and their opinions, even though I disagree with them. They can disagree with me. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not going to get online and start destroying their lives and debanking them and deplatforming them and everything else. It's ridiculous. It's just, to me, it's the use of the technology that's evil, not it's the technology itself isn't inherently evil. I'm trying to figure out how I can use AI to help me do more of the things I really enjoy. My hope is that there are a lot of things I've talked about that won't be as catastrophic as I'm making out. But I think raising the alarm now can avoid that pain and suffering later on. And that's what I want to do. Yes, and I do agree with Professor Pearson. Technology is absolutely fantastic. It's basically the uses that we put it to that could be a problem. And there's so much about AI we don't know yet, especially as Professor Pearson's saying regarding the psychological implications. If you know what I mean, we just don't know yet. Have a look at the lessons learned, as I said before, about social media. A lot of people haven't learned the lessons of social media. Burnout. What is it called? FOMO, fear of missing out. So people are on their phones 24/7. They might miss something. We've all been through stages. I've been through stages with it years ago like that. What have I missed out? What message have I missed out on? Even if it's the most trivial piece of garbage in hell, we're still there going. Fascinating. All right, well, my name is David. Thanks for joining me for another Studio 64 Science, Space and Tech News update. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. If you're up for it, drop a comment down below the video because I'd love to hear what you think. All right, take care. And as I always say, if you can't be good at it. As I also always say,
my brain hurts!